Hello and welcome to Social Cohesion in Action. Over the coming weeks, we'll be presenting to you information that will help you to navigate these times. Social cohesion, as some of you may know, strives to bring us together as one people so that we can help to build our communities and by extension, our nation. I am Esan Hall, Project Officer within the Department of Social Cohesion, Culture, Youth and Sport. Today we'll be discussing social distancing and its effects with the aim of bringing to you the understanding of self in relation to home, community, and national responsibility. Let us join Ms. Natasha Singh Lewis, the Program Coordinator within the Department of Social Cohesion, and Mr. Will Campbell, a trainer, lecturer at the University of Guyana, as they discuss social distancing and its effects.
Thank you, Mr. Esan Hall, our Project Officer in the Department of Social Cohesion. And thank you, Mr. Will Campbell, and welcome to our first episode in a series of presentation titled Social Cohesion in Action.
Thank you for having me.
Today, our first presentation, we will deal with social distancing and its effects. We have been home for almost 10 weeks or a bit more than that for some people. Both parents, children from school, we're all at home, and we have had a little bit more than our usual 8 weeks of August holiday started in March. There are many things happening in the home. There are many dynamics playing out, and we would like if you can start our conversation discussing some of the dynamics in the home as we were all at home.
All right. I think it's a little different. It's a lot different from the 8-week August holiday. Because one of the differences is that during that period, our children were allowed to interact. So children went into the countryside to spend some time by granny, or they went to summer camp, or they went to summer classes. They were allowed to leave the yard and go play ball around the village. So it's a little different. In addition to that, some of the parents were out working, so everyone wasn't at home all the time, like is happening now. And so what we are having in a lot of households is everybody at home all the time at the same time. And so now this provides us with opportunities. It also provides us with some challenges because, the closer we are, the greater the possibility of friction. And so, again, it's different. And then on top of that, we have the fears, the anxiety, the information overload. All of those are some of the issues that we have to face now that everyone is at home.
Thank you. I really appreciate that you've touched on the point of the friction and the challenges. And so what we've set out to do at Social Cohesion is to provide information to our families at home. Some of the little things that we can do to make things better within the home, because if we are able to have better family functions at home, then we are able to focus on what we can do to help others outside of our home.
Absolutely. I think that one of the number one things that is needful is structure. Before coronavirus, our daily routines provided some structure. And so we got up every morning knowing exactly what we were going to do. We were going to get the children ready for school. We were going to go to work. When we get home in the afternoon, then we cook, we prepare for the next day, that kind of thing. So there was a routine. And the pandemic has taken that away from us. And so for a while at least, a lot of people were in disarray, not knowing, you got up and you just kind of drifted around the house all day. I think one of the first things that is needful is to provide some measure of structure. So we have a definite plan for how we're going to navigate the day. What are the children going to do from what time to what time? What are we going to do and during for what duration? So if we are able to somehow reconfigure our schedules and provide for ourselves some kind of structure, that I believe would be the first step in helping to provide some kind of normalcy and some kind of control in the home.
Thank you for that. We are all looking forward to normalcy, and um, uh, many people have been talking about normalcy in a different context. What would be the new normal as we get out, as we plan to get back to regular routine? But before we get to preparing ourselves for a new normal, I want to shed some light on individual roles in the family. Um, we know that the father figure in the home is at home now because of the pandemic, and that is not always at home. The children are more accustomed to mommy being at home all the time, and so that's okay. But that is at home all the time, and that is in itself a challenge for some fathers because they're not accustomed to being home all the time. Many fathers did not plant a garden. Many fathers did not take care of children. Many fathers were not locked in a, for want of a better phrase, locked in a house for so long. And so tell us a little bit about the role of a father and how fathers can overcome some of their challenges as they help to build a better family.
You are right. The role of the father will have to change. The role of those fathers who are at home. I mean, most of us were accustomed to getting out there every day and getting it, as we say. And this has put us in a situation where we are indoors with everyone. And for a lot of us fathers, it is uncomfortable. Um, but it also provides an opportunity, or a lot of opportunities, really, because I mean, if we're going to admit it, our being out of the home so much kind of creates a disconnect between ourselves and the rest of our families. And so fathers now have an opportunity to reconnect. Now, it could be a little awkward at first. And I think that let me use my own example. I think that I'm an involved father. But being home a lot now has made me more acutely aware that I was not as connected to my daughters and my home is full of women. Mm-hmm. You know, I have no sons. I'm not as connected as I thought I was. And so, you know, my daughters are accustomed to talking to their mother and they do lady things all the time. And I now, you know, I was kind of a spectator at first. But as fathers, we can find ways of fitting in. We can find ways of creating conversations, necessary conversation and interactions with our other halves and with our children. And children need that father figure. A common misconception is that children need their mothers, particularly girls. But they also need that validation, that interaction with their father, who is a role model for some gentleman that they will interact with later on. And so fathers can use this opportunity to talk to their children, to interact with their children. I saw a video just this morning with a father doing a tea party with his toddler daughter, and then he did a review of her restaurant service. It was hilarious, but there was a father, big, strong gentleman, sitting on tiny pieces of dolly furniture, but his child is going to remember that for a lifetime. He spent some time creating memories, and here is an opportunity for us to create memories, to have conversations, to play with them, to do what they want to do, and our children remember that a lot more than all of the things that we gave them. They remember the time we spent with them a lot more than they remember the things that we gave to them. So as fathers, as men, we have a really great opportunity to spend some time with our children, create some memories, and in so doing, create connections, real connections with our children.
Thank you very much, Mr. Campbell. The connections are very important. Each one of us, we have a different role to play in our families. I like that you emphasize that there's a greater need for the father to be involved in the lives of the children. But as a mother myself, I would like to to make an appeal myself. The role of cooking and washing and cleaning does not reside in the mother responsibility alone. So how can we help mommy at this time?
Now, I've discovered, and I'm speaking as a husband and as a father, that um, women like it when men get involved in the housework. I'm not going to say too much because I don't want to get my fellow fathers, husbands into trouble. But women like it when men participate in those household chores that were traditional. Women want to rest from this a little bit. And so if every once in a while we could, pitch in and do the cooking that day, and every child knows that when daddy cooks, the food tastes much better than when mommy cooks. Or it could just be that it's a different taste. I don't know. So we can do that every once in a while. We can help out with little things. And I've discovered a little secret, and I'd like the ladies to close their ears right now, that, because I don't want them to hear this, that somehow they feel like you're helping them, even if all you're doing there is standing around and passing the things that they need and having good conversation with them. So it's not that hard, and you don't have to do it all alone. You could make it again, this is an opportunity to create connections, to build relationships. So if my wife is doing the cooking and I'm passing the colander, and I'm straining the rice for her, or I'm passing the pot spoon, here I'm building a relationship with my wife. It's an opportunity. So it does not have to be a chore. It does not have to be a challenge necessarily. We can get involved and make our wives happier, make our homes happier.
Wonderful. I really like that you have touched on what we do individually and together helps us to build relationships. And at this point in time, we're all at home. We have to look at this in a positive light. For working parents, we have not had much time to spend with our family. And this is one thing that you can rely on, the time that you have with your family now. It's really something positive if you make it to be that positive. I remember the first time my husband, we've been home for like 2 weeks, and I recognized that we're all pulling in our own corners because the children, they are happy with the Wi-Fi and a gadget, and they're in their own corner. And so the mother is cooking and the father is doing something else, and it's not all together. So I have decided that I'm going to ask my husband to cook. And I unplugged the Wi-Fi, so the children, they all came out, and when they came downstairs, they said, wow, Daddy's in the kitchen. And
It became a spectator sport. It became an event. Yeah.
he did not realize that it meant so much to them to see that he's in the kitchen and cooking. And for me, that was a great score. It really, hearing the children exclaim, made him want to go back into the kitchen, but it was an honest exclamation from all of them. Daddy's in the kitchen.
Sometimes with the advent of the Wi-Fi, this is a phenomenon by itself. With the advent of Wi-Fi, we have lost that real human connection. So Wi-Fi connects us with 1 million followers and 5,000 friends, but we have lost real connections. And so sometimes it's important to turn the Wi-Fi off. And my wife does that every once in a while. She would say, let's go out in the garden and put down the phones. One of the things we've been doing a lot more of as well is eating together. I mean, before this, you grabbed what you could and then you ran out of the house. Now we have an opportunity to eat together, and we have conversations around the table. And it's amazing at how meaningful those conversations can be. We've talked about everything around the table, from movies to, what song is trending, to choosing a life partner later on, and choosing a career. All of those conversations happen right around the table. So sometimes we must put the gadgets down because it's easy. I mean, I myself, if somebody doesn't pull me up, could be on my phone from morning till night. Sometimes it's work and sometimes it's not. And I'm grateful that somebody in my household could say, well, okay, let's put aside these 15 minutes to have real social interaction, because what we do on Facebook is virtual and it's not real. It cannot, it could supplement, but it cannot substitute for real human contact. It's important that we have that.
It's one of our core activities. It's one of our goals. We set out on a daily basis in the Department of Social Cohesion to teach, to share what building individual and community relationship is all about. And so if we have happy family, that extends into better communities.
I'm a firm believer in the philosophy that strong families are the foundation of societies. And once we have strong families, we will have strong communities. And if we have strong communities, we will have a strong nation. So I agree with you 100% there.
I want to touch on a side that is not very nice. During this pandemic, we've seen some very good things happening in which we demonstrated being the keeper of our brother. And so the things that we talked about, planting a little kitchen garden and sharing and so on, it actually happened at a community level, it happened at a national level, so we know the caring and sharing is still within our Guyanese people. And the love is sincere and the caring is always there for each other. However, we have noticed that there is another side, and it doesn't only happen in Guyana, we've seen it in social media. When you go out to give something to the neighbor's children, especially if it's food or you're giving them something to sustain themselves, we notice that the camera is very prevalent. And we take points for it, and I don't know what it is that happens on Facebook or any social media for that matter when we share what we do. We've come from a family where we're taught that what the right hand does, the left hand should not know. And so we go about that as our guiding principle, but nevertheless, we've seen it across social media that happens. In my mind, it's not a good thing. As a staff, we've discussed it. It's not a good thing. But if you can share some light on that for us.
Yeah, let me first say this. There are some organizations that have donors, and when they do charity work, when they do charitable work, they are expected to provide some kind of evidence that the funding went where it was supposed to go, which is a little different from publishing on social media. And I want to go into the mind of charity workers a little bit, if you will. When you give charity, when you are helping out other people, the motivation is very important. Why am I doing this? And it seems to me that if I feel like I have to go live or I have to record this and then disseminate it globally, the fact that I am doing something nice for someone else, then the motivation is in the wrong place. Because if I am helping out my neighbor, I should be helping out my neighbor. But if I have a camera focused on the fact that I am handing over things that I spent money on to my neighbor, I have taken the focus from where it should be. So the motivation now is different. I am concerned about people seeing me giving rather than me helping out someone. And so, I mean, there are going to be people who will argue with this, but I feel strongly that if I need to have a camera taking pictures of the fact that I'm giving and then sharing it with the world, then my motivation is in the wrong place. The other side, I want to look at it from the other side. Nobody wants to demonstrate, to display to the world that they are so badly in need that they had to accept alms from someone else. Sure. Nobody wants that. You know, this is not something that people want to demonstrate. There are some people who, for gratitude's sake, would, go and say, well, Miss Natasha was very helpful to me when I was in a bad place. And usually they do this after they've recovered from that situation. But when you do that while they're in a bad place, you take away whatever little dignity they had left. A lot of people have difficulty accepting help in the first place. And then when you have to accept that help for the whole world to see, it strips you of your dignity. So I think it is not something that we should continue to practice. It is humiliating for the persons whom we're helping, and it demonstrates that our motives are selfish. And it definitely is something that we need to take another look at and do differently.
Let me share one experience with you. We've just completed our month of fasting, and it's a time when we double up or triple up on our charity because it's a month of blessing. And we sat down as a family and we thought of this because we would have received donations from relatives overseas. And you want them to know that the money they sent for charity, you actually did do this with it. And so what we did was to take the pictures of what we got and to whom we were going to distribute and send it directly to the person who's the donor indeed. And so we didn't take shots of people and that kind of thing, just to save them that embarrassment. I've seen it. Some people are very embarrassed to receive that bag, even though they need that little bit to go on. Thank you for sharing with us. So I want to bring another perspective in as we discuss social distancing and what's happening in the family. We've been home and we've tried very hard. We've listened to the Ministry of Health. We've gotten good guidelines. We really enjoyed their show. They had a wonderful show one evening, and we saw what's really happening with us gynaes at home with this pandemic. They have given us some very clear guidelines, but there are some gynaes who do not adhere to the guidelines. Can you help us to make our viewers, our listeners understand that we really do need to adhere to the guidelines?
Yeah, I think maybe we could spend a moment on some of the reasons that people don't adhere. One I believe is the conspiracy theories. There are a lot of people who believe that this whole thing is concocted to somehow manipulate us, and so we don't need to follow these guidelines because this is something that somebody is doing in order to gain something for themselves. And we need to, I think we need to arm ourselves with the facts. There are a lot of theories going on out there, and we need to arm ourselves with the facts. So some of us subscribe to these theories and we ignore the facts. Then there are those of us who feel like we're strong, our immune system is healthy, and we take a clean out every weekend, and we use this sarsaparilla, and I'm not too familiar with all of them. And so our immune system is more powerful than any virus. Then there are those of us who feel that our religion, somehow our connection with our religion will make us immune to this thing. And so, God is more powerful than any, which I believe, by the way. But I don't believe that God expects us to. I believe that God expects us to use the wisdom He has given us. So there are these different reasons why people don't follow. And then there are some people who, of necessity, are not in a position to follow all of the guidelines. There are some people, masks, at least at the very beginning, were extremely expensive. Even toilet paper and hand sanitizer and soap, the prices went up. Some people were not in a position to follow those guidelines. There are some people who cannot afford to stay home. We have people, maybe thousands of people right here in Ghana, if they don't hit the road from morn till night, their children will not eat today. And so that is another factor. So those are some of the things we have to consider when we look at the fact that that some people are not staying home. But I think it is important for those of us who can to adhere to those guidelines. These are the same doctors that we were going to when we don't feel well. Why are they going to be lying to us now? We've seen real people in hospital beds telling us that this is a very real threat. and, and, and that no one is immune. At first, we felt like only people with compromised immune systems, but we're seeing strong, healthy people being taken down by this virus. And even celebrities and powerful people, prime ministers of powerful countries are being affected. And it is, I mean, what else would it take to convince us that this is a real threat and that we have a responsibility to protect ourselves and to protect the people around us? So we need to arm ourselves with credible information and follow those guidelines.
Interesting that you touched on powerful people being taken down by this virus. We have some youngsters, I would say, fathers included, that does not take the guidelines very seriously, and we pass them in and out. You can see them on the street sides. I rather suspect it's not normal for them to stay home all the time.
Yeah, mostly men.
Mostly men, yes. It's interesting that you would find one or two females involved, but mostly men. And what I have found, they're more younger people that are accustomed to being on the corner linemen. And no matter what guidelines are set out or how much the Ministry of Health and all of the health officials insist that you should be keeping your distance, you should be wearing your mask and so on, we still see them out. My assistant said, Miss Lewis, they're busting a lime. And busting a lime involves drinking alcohol and so on. What would you say to these younger folks not adhering to the guidelines?
So I guess because I'm a behavioral scientist, I look at the underlying factors and so on. And there are two things involved there. One is the whole issue of masculinity, and the other is the fable, the personal fable of youth. Young people generally feel invincible. We feel like nothing can go wrong with us. We see our friends, our colleagues do things and get into trouble or for it, but we somehow feel that we will be able to do it and not fall into those problems. And it can't happen to us because we're young. And then society has taught us as men that we have to be strong and we have to somehow demonstrate that strength. I mean, even the cadence of our voice must be strong. Otherwise, if my voice flows a little too much, then there's something wrong with me. And another thing, and a big part of the whole masculinity issue is the whole going out. Men are supposed to be home all the time. If you're home all the time, you must be some sissy. I mean, I've had people tell me that because I'm kind of a homeboy. Well, that's the wrong expression, but you know what I mean, a homebody. So men are not supposed to be home all the time. It is part of our culture that men demonstrate their masculinity by hanging out in the corner with other men, and we have loud discussions about cricket and politics and all these things. But this is not the time for that. And this pandemic is not going to be here forever. And I think it is important that as men, we understand that we could suspend these things just for a little bit to protect those whom we care for. Because even if I am so strong that I don't come down with the virus, I could carry the virus. I could be a carrier and be healthy and strong and breathing normally and be able to do everything while I have the virus in my system. In fact, we all have viruses in our systems all the time. But because of the strength of our immune system, it doesn't always take us down. So if I want to be a responsible male figure, then even if I feel that I am strong, I will follow those guidelines so that I don't take home this illness or transmit it to other people who might not be as strong as I am. It is important that we follow those guidelines.
The point I really wanted to expound upon, you've brought it out excellently. It is not only up to us what we do on the road, it's us what we do on the road and taking it back home to all those people in the home who would have been taking all the precautions and adhering to the guidelines, and you being the one delinquent one going out and bringing it home back to us. Mr. Campbell, I want to thank you very much for being with us here today, our first episode on social cohesion in action, talking about social distancing and its effect in the home and the community, and by extension, what takes place in our country. I want to thank you very much, and I look forward to talking to you again in our next episode on social cohesion in action.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you to our viewers for listening.
Thank you very much.